Hello, everyone. My name is Mary. My story is sad and at the same time, very touching. I've been holding these feelings for a long time, and finally, I think it's time to tell you, to share what I've been through. I hope for your understanding and support with likes. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel and sit back. Don't forget to leave your comments under the video. I was born 17 years ago. In my family, everything was initially not easy. My father and mother, as long as I remember, always quarreled with each other. I often witnessed their quarrels, fights, and every time my father came home from work, my mother became hysterical. Every morning, we would wake up with her, and my mother would cry because we didn't really have anything to eat. My mother tried to look for a job, but because she was still young, she couldn't get one. My mother always said that she and my father used to love each other, but then everything changed after I was born. They tried to live together, my father worked, however, earned little, and money was always not enough. It was exhausting. My parents were nervous. There was often mayhem at home because of my scattered toys. My father, coming home from work, swore at my mother for the mess, and she at him for the fact that they had nothing to eat. So we lived for the first 6 to 7 years. Then my father started drinking. He drank every day, and the swearing got even worse. Mom yelled at him for drinking the last of his money. I already had to be sent to school, and my documents were not in order, so I stayed at home. Relatives have long since severed all ties with us, calling the family dysfunctional. Then my mother broke all the dishes at home out of anger. Dad came back drunk and fell on the floor. He fell right on the shards and scratched himself. He bled. Then the neighbors came and saw the whole scene. I was standing in the corner, dirty, hungry, and cold. It was already winter, and the house had no heating for non-payment. From such a shock, the neighbors called some people, and I was taken to an orphanage. I kept thinking that if I hadn't been born, nothing like this would have happened. Since then, I have not seen my parents. They did not come to me, did not visit, did not try to pick me up, and the years spent in boarding school were terrible. At first, every night and day, I called my mother. I wanted her to pick me up, but she was not there. The guys who lived there with me were very rude. I was often insulted. Things were taken away, food, I still went hungry, and in addition, I was hung up on all sorts of joints that I did not do. For example, stealing bread or sugar. I was part of the punished part, but I was afraid to tell anyone about it. Over the years, the hope of seeing Mom and Dad faded. I realized they weren't coming and stopped waiting. And then I was told that people were coming for me. They want to be my new parents. At that moment, I was filled with hope that my life would finally change. I was so happy that I took my things with me. It was a shirt and pants and everything, and ran out into the corridor. There were 2 people waiting for me. It was a woman and a man. They looked nice and kind. I ran to them, and my aunt hugged me tightly. She said that now I will have a new life, like I wanted. They took me, and we came to a new home. It was a small but cozy house with a beautiful dog Bella and a lot of beautiful dishes. I was given a children's room. Can you imagine? For the first time in my life, I had my own room. It was gorgeous. There was a large bed, a wardrobe, and a table. I wanted to be there day and night. In the closet, I found a lot of clothes for girls and boys. I changed my clothes and went down to lunch. My new parents said that it suits me very well. I asked whose clothes they were, and the new mother started crying and said they were their children's clothes. And she said they had died recently, and that's why they wanted more children. I decided that I would do everything I could to make sure they didn't feel alone. The first 2 days were great. I ate a lot, slept a lot, and watched cartoons. On the 3rd day, my new mom asked me to clean the house, and my dad took me to the garage to clean everything. There was a terrible mess, but I managed, and the next day, I cleaned the whole house, the yard, then the basement. Then I began to cook every day, and gradually, I had more and more things to do. A week later, I broke a plate accidentally, for which I received a slap in the face. In the 2nd week, I was told to live on a routine. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., hang up until I finish all the things. Gradually, their attitude worsened. I was exhausted and tired again. I wasn't allowed anywhere out of the house, just to clean the garage. I spent all day doing things and couldn't believe they were such hypocritical people. Life was a nightmare again. And then one day, when I accidentally fell asleep, my alleged father started hitting on me. I couldn't believe it. It was very bad. I told my mother everything, but she didn't believe me and threw me out. It wasn't until a few months later, when I had a stomachache, that I found out I was pregnant. I worked part-time where I could, sometimes lived on the streets, sometimes I had enough money to rent a room for the night. At one of my jobs, I met a girl named Greta, who was the only person who treated me well. It was she who sheltered me at home, and we began to live together. Soon, I gave birth to a daughter. I named her Alice, but I had no feelings for her other than hatred. I didn't know how to react to it. When I was released from the hospital, I didn't understand how to treat her, what she needed, why she was yelling, and I didn't want to understand at all. I was disgusted by everything from her gaze to her burp. I didn't want to take care of her, and when she screamed at night, I just slept on. I hated my daughter, and only then realized that I treat her the same way as my parents used to treat me. Maybe it's just that people like us can't love our children. Greta helped me with it more than once, even though she provided for us. She was completely different, not like me. She took care of us, although I don't know how we deserved it. When Alice got sick, she was the one who ran to the hospital and looked for doctors. And when I was sick, again, she took care of us. I was grateful to her. When my daughter grew up, she called us Mama Greta and Mama Mary. My daughter is already 8 years old, but our relationship has not warmed. She was closer to my friend than to me, but it didn't bother me. I even thought at some point, maybe it's for the best. After all, the love for my daughter did not wake up for so many years. That's what I said and thought until something happened. A year later, I had an accident, and I was happy to die. The doctor said I needed a donor to save my life because I had a rare blood type, exactly the same as my daughter's. As Greta later told me, Alice heard the doctors talking, volunteered to help me, and said that she wanted to save her mother and become my donor. I was in shock. But how? We don't love each other, do we? Not in the way you think, apparently. She spent all these days sleeping on a chair in your room, reading books to you every day, talking and holding your hand while you were unconscious. Greta told me. These words shocked me and put me in a stupor. I started to cry. That was the first thing I heard when I came to my senses, and it was the last thing I was prepared for. After the conversation, I called my daughter to me and thanked her. And she was silent most of the time, and then she was like, "Mom, I love you more than anyone in the world," she said. At that moment, my hands shook and my blankets shook. I began to cry. I cried so bitterly that I could not calm down. I could not even breathe normally and say something in response to these words. "I don't deserve you," I said to Alice, and she came up to me with her little hands, clung to me, and hugged me tight. It was a gift for someone like me who wasn't worthy of her attention, love, and warmth. But right from that second, I decided that now I would finally be a good mom for her, because it was the right thing to do, because it was what I wanted. A month later, I was released from the hospital and we finally returned home. I was so happy and at peace with myself. I started taking care of my daughter, doing homework together, going for walks, talking often, and reading books together. And, she turns out to be such a smart girl. As time passed, my memory of who her father was faded. After all, she's my daughter, and nothing else matters.